to change the way we do business in Connecticut. I chose the latter, a more difficult course, I know, for me and for you. And that's why I'm doing these 17 town hall meetings and appearing before every chamber of commerce and every business organization that will have me. This, by the way, is my 8th speaking engagement today, and is my 6th addressing the budget in a single day. I'm not running away from what I'm doing, and I'm not running away from what I'm asking the people of Connecticut to do. In fact, I'm running to it, and that's why I'm here in Norwich. The budget framework that I put out well before I put a budget out was no new base spending in the general fund. Now, we do have other funds, and we will increase spending on transportation. I want to acknowledge that. We'll also pay for that. But in base spending, there's no new additional money. Some people have said, well, there's more money in that account. So let me just explain. What we do is access federal dollars for additional Medicaid expenses that we're going to have, in part because of long-term unemployment has pushed more people to be eligible for Medicaid. But with respect to base spending dollars of Connecticut money, we're not spending any more money. In fact, we're going to spend less next year than we're spending the current year. We will not borrow money to cover operating expenses. We will fully fund our pension obligations to the tune of $877 million. The last governor entered into a transaction, an agreement with the unions of the state. Part of the quote-unquote concessions, I wouldn't use that word, was to not fund the pensions to the tune of in excess of $300 million. That's not a concession, because I've got to pay it. You've got to pay. And it makes the 5th worst funded pensions in the country even worse funded. And we would not offer and will not offer an early retirement program that puts further pressure on the pension system. It makes no sense to pay people today to retire who are going to retire in a year or two, give them more money on a permanent basis, and further burden the pension plan. What are we doing? We have close to $800 million in cuts in line-by-line expenditures from that original budget I was handed in November. We are restructuring state government from 81 agencies to 57, and we're doing that in year 1, a 30% reduction. We've identified savings that we're asking our employee group to come forward with and to negotiate. It's $1 billion a year for a total of $1.8 billion per year in reduced spending. And only then did we turn to revenue, and yes, it does ask for additional revenue. On that point, I want to say this, that it is a broad tax increases. It's broad so that none of them are too big. I know they're big. I don't want to deny that. But they're broad because what we're trying to do is broaden the tax base as opposed to narrow it. We can't make it easier for people to make bad decisions in the future. That's what got us in this place to begin with. We fully fund education. There was a $281 million gap in the ECS, Educational Cost Sharing Grant. We filled that gap in this budget. To do otherwise would be to shift that additional expense to Norwich and surrounding communities to make up for the absence of that money. Or it would have represented the laying off in our state of thousands and thousands of teachers across the state. We filled that hole. We refuse to balance the budget on the back of local taxpayers in general. I've been asked, well, why don't you do it this way of this northeastern governor? Or why don't you do it the way another northeastern governor is doing it? Or maybe Indiana or Ohio or someplace else. If you actually scratch the surface in those cases, what they're doing is shifting from state government to local government the obligations that used to be paid for by state government. In Connecticut, that would mean massive property tax increases, some of the most progressive taxes that we pay in the state. I vow to protect the basic safety net. I know that there are some cuts. We explain those, and we've bent over backwards to make sure that we will have a safety net in place if this budget is passed. We also support supportive housing, returning to a level that will allow us to sustain that affordable housing which we currently have, rebuild it, and add marginally to housing as well in the long run. And we fully fund our pension obligations. Now, what does it mean in Norwich? And I know that there are other towns elected officials represented. I didn't run everybody's numbers. I apologize. Norwich's median income is $48,505. The average income tax increase in that group would be $500, or $962 per week, or $101.37 per day. For a household of $48,505, there would be approximately additional sales tax of $42, or $81 per week, or 12 cents per day. What would Norwich have lost? An ECS wasn't $9,200,000. And each of the communities otherwise represented here by elected officials or attendees also would have lost. $9 million to Norwich would have been a lot of money. Would have been a lot of property taxes. In fact, I don't know what a mill represents in Norwich as far as, what's that? How much? 2.3 million. So in a year that would have been at least a $2.5 million increase per year in your, or $2.5 million increase in your property taxes if we had just done what other governors would have done or have done in this situation. Final line, we've got to turn a corner. As a state, we have failed to grow jobs for 22 years. We need stability in this state. We need to prove that we can confront our problems and go in a different direction. That's what this budget is about, because ultimately we have to create jobs. The longer we wait to deal with these problems, the deeper those problems are going to get. Failure to address past deficits in a meaningful way is what got us to this point and also led to downgrades in our bonds. In 1975, we had the highest bond rating you could have. And now we're in the bottom quartile of all states with respect to bond ratings currently. Actually, only a handful of states have a lower bond rating than us. Bottom line is, I've made some decisions, I've made some recommendations, I've given that speech, I've thrown out this budget, and I'm going from place to place to answer questions and also to get ideas on other savings that perhaps we could build into the budget. With that, I know the Lieutenant Governor is kind of running the microphone, and we'll start the discussion.
Thank you, Governor. I'll ask the first speaker to come up, and if you